In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how money is creatively made in property investing. Now, I'm going to be sharing with you from a property sourcing perspective because I believe that property sourcing is the key fulcrum to all aspects of property investment. Now, I'm going to be totally transparent with you from the beginning of this video. This is literally a presentation that I've been invited across the whole of the UK to present to people in order to help them move further faster in their property investment journey. So I've been in rooms over the years sharing this information and have been told and sent messages about the content in this information that has literally shared that it has changed people's lives. So that being said, fasten your seatbelt, and I may even at the end of this video also share with you a number of the messages and testimonials that I've got from people as a result of the content inside of this session. So with that being said, let's go. The first thing I want to do is share with you a little bit about myself. What qualifies me to be able to give you this information? The first thing is my first full-time job back in 2005 was as an estate agent. I worked in an estate agency as a 19-year-old full-time, and it helped me literally uncover super secrets to property that later on I went on to develop and learn even further. Now, after working as an estate agent in 2005, fast forward, I studied a number of degrees. I was doing property part-time whilst I went to university, and then part-time whilst I worked part-time jobs after that. But then I founded my own property sourcing company in 2015. And this property sourcing company specialized in finding great property deals and selling them on, trading them on to other property investors. And it was then that I got my really keen interest in property investment, but more importantly, what it can actually do and how it can help people create financial freedom and move further faster with their families and their most closest loved ones. Now, in 2016, after founding that business and doing quite a bit with other investors, I started realizing that I needed to educate myself. So you know what I did? I invested in a high-level property investment training program. That investment was £16,000 plus VAT. So in total, £19,200. Let's just call it £20,000 for the sake of simplicity. Now, it was doing that training program for 12 months that radically changed my life. In the year 2017, I bought my first property. In the year 2017, I replaced my income. In the year 2016-17, my wife was able to leave her job, and I was able to do the same the year after. So a question you should be asking yourself right now is, Samuel, what's in it for me? Why should I watch this video? Why should I have my notepad, my iPad, my tablet, my stylus, my pen, paper, and everything I need in order to succeed? And the answer to that is simple. I'm going to be sharing with you ideas around what I call creative sourcing. I'm also going to be sharing with you concepts and ideas around popular strategies, just so you know that there's some popular stuff out there. But then last but not least, I'm also going to share with you what I call some key core revenue opportunities, which I don't think you're going to hear many people talking about out there. Now, in order to jump in to the first thing, we need to have a definition for creative sourcing, because in our current landscape, we hear so many people talking about property sourcing and doing this and doing that. I define property sourcing with two simple key characteristics. The first one is we're talking about off-market property deals. So if you're someone who's had property sourcers approach you and say to you they've got a property deal for you, but those property deals are coming from Rightmove, Zoopla, and all these other online platforms, then in my understanding, in my definition, that is not property sourcing, okay? What creative property sourcing is where you are finding deals that are off market. They are not available to the general public. They're not available on online websites. They're not available for the mass market of people to consume or even find out about, okay? Now, the second characteristic for me is that they have to be direct to a vendor. What do we mean by direct to vendor? Well, by direct to vendor, we mean the actual human being who's trying to sell that property is the actual human being you're dealing with, you're discussing with, and you're discoursing with. Now, it might not be a sale of a property. I know there's a lot of creative strategies out there today, such as rent to rent, lease options, etc. So it might be the rental or the control that you're attempting to gain over property. But either way, those two key core characteristics are essential. The first one is it needs to be off market, and the second one is it needs to be direct to vendor. And that's how I define creative sourcing. So with that being shared, let's now talk about some of the popular strategies so you can see, okay, these are popular things I can do if I want to start my creative sourcing journey. Now, the first thing, which is the most famous, is as famous as Shakespeare because he was someone who was actually doing this strategy, is through means of the process of leafleting. Now, leafleting is one of the age-old marketing tactics that can be used in order to infuse your property investment journey. If you decide to focus on a specific key area, let's say you live in Manchester and you see this specific postcode where you would like to own, buy more properties, or just make more money from property in that vicinity. Well, it's simple. All you need to do is craft and create a leaflet and make sure the copy is appropriate, and then start to distribute that leaflet into that area. Now, I would never advise that you do the leafleting yourself, maybe just the first or second time so you understand the process. But after that, you're going to use leafleters to basically distribute leaflets. So leafleting is just one of the popular strategies. The second strategy is networking. And what I'm going to do is later on in this video, I'm actually going to share with you a key about networking that most people do not understand. And then being someone who ran my own property networking event for over 3 years and literally had one of the most successful property investment networking events in the whole of the UK, I can definitely speak on that one. After networking, you've got direct mail. Now, direct mail has probably become the most famous in the last 10 years, with most gurus telling people go and send landlord letters. So as a result, we've got lots of people across the UK who are sending landlord letters, which is effectively just direct mail as a strategy for property sourcing. Then you have what we call online marketing. And again, it's a popular strategy, even though for some reason I don't know why more people don't use it. Online marketing can be as simple as just posting Facebook posts because you're online and you're marketing. But it's more sophisticated when you start doing things like running Facebook ads. And again, I'm using Facebook, but Facebook is by no means of any stretch the only platform you can use. There are multiple platforms out there. But again, I like to teach from a perspective of principle rather than a perspective of tactic, because if I just focus on the tactic, guess what? If there's no Facebook tomorrow, you're going to say, Samuel, this stuff doesn't work. But it's not that it doesn't work. You just haven't figured out how to work it. Now, the next strategy is one I don't see many people talk about, but again, it's a very crucial strategy in terms of the popular strategies out there, and that is known as data scraping. Now, data scraping is where you can hire someone who's offshore. They can be in the Philippines, they can be in Bangladesh, they can be anywhere across the world, and they basically go on these portals like Rightmove, like Zoopla, or some more sophisticated portals. And what they basically do is they scrape the data off of the platform. Now, you might be asking yourself the question, well, Samuel, why would I want to have someone scrape this data off of the platform? Well, it's a great question. The reason why you'd want someone to do data scraping is because then you can start looking for patterns. Now, my first degree was in computing and statistics, and the first master's I studied was a master's in statistics. And when you get into fields like statistics or fields like mathematics, you start to see that there are always patterns emerging or always patterns that are left behind. So you might be looking for patterns like how many of these properties inside of this data that I basically scraped off are no longer on the market for sale, but the owners still desire to sell. You might look for other patterns, such as how many of the properties on this actual data set have been on the market for longer than 12 months, for example, okay? And as you start going through the data, you start seeing these patterns emerge, which you can leverage and utilize to your best ability. So here's a little pro tip for those of you who think data scraping might be a strategy for you. Now, in the UK, most estate agents, and I only know this because I used to be one, sign an agreement called an exclusivity agreement when they are going to help you sell or when they're going to help you rent out your house. Now, these exclusivity agreements are not the only agreements, but they're the main agreements, and they typically last for 12 weeks long. Now, if you're interested in me doing a video on estate agents and a few hacks you can use in order to move further faster in your future, then let me know in the comments below. Now, the moment you understand that estate agents are having a 12-week agreement with sellers that they're working with, having someone scrape data for you and just look specifically for properties that have gone past the 12-week mark, gone past the 4-month mark, gone past the 5-month mark can be a great pro tip for you to start finding properties which are now out of contract, but the sellers are still interested in getting them sold. All right. Now, the last popular strategy I'll talk about for this sake is property spotting. Now, again, property spotting for me is probably the oldest of these property strategies. Now, you might be saying, Samuel, how can you prove that that's the oldest? Well, I'll tell you how, right? If you go to the book of Proverbs chapter 4, found in the Bible, I read the Bible every single day. That's how I found it. It literally outlines to you how you can spot properties that are in disrepair, how you can spot properties that are not in the right appropriate order, and how you can basically theorize that the owners of those properties need help. Okay. And that's found in Proverbs chapter 24 for anyone who wants to go and dig that out. Now, the reason property spotting is such a powerful tool is because property spotting allows you to see something before the market ever sees it, right? It allows you to engage with something in your local area a lot of the time that no one else is engaging with. Now, there's two kind of ways you understand property spotting, and I'll share this just for semantics sake, right? If you're based in the US of A and you hear the term property spotting, you will never hear it called property spotting. You'll hear terms like driving for dollars, okay? So if you're one of those people who like listening to US property people and hearing their hacks and strategies on how to invest in property, then just listen out for driving for dollars, because that basically just means property spotting. Now, if we're in the UK, what you might hear is a term called drop your stance. Okay. Now, drop your stance is slightly different to property spotting, but it's basically the methodology used to spot properties in the best way. So what does drop your stance mean? Well, dropping your stance is kind of like the strategy that's used in order to more effectively do property spotting. So what it basically means is if you usually take the bus in your area where you live, or the area where you work, or the area where you're focusing on property, instead of taking the bus, drop your stance one down and ride a bike, all right? Or if you usually ride a bike, drop your stance one down and decide to walk. If you usually drive, then drop your stance and take the bus, or walk, or ride a bike. Now, by doing that, what you're gonna do is you're gonna open up the RAS. The RAS is your reticular activator system inside of your mind, and it's gonna help you, again, spot patterns more effectively in the area where you're looking at potentially investing. And this is one of the major keys that so many property investors I've met over the years have utilized and leveraged in order to find some great deals. So those are 6 very well-known property strategies, and very simply, they are leafleting, they are networking, they are direct mail, they're online marketing, there's data scraping, and last but not least, there was also property spotting. So with those popular strategies shared, a great question you might be asking yourself is, Samuel, look, now that I know 6 different ways that I can start actually finding off-market deals which are direct to vendor, where are the actual revenue opportunities? Okay, now we can look at what are some of the revenue opportunities available for those of us who are actually finding great property deals. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about what I define as great property deals, then let me know in the comments below, and maybe we can even do a video on that, right? So you guys let me know. So I'm going to share with you 3 revenue opportunities that you can leverage and utilize straight away if you are on that journey of using these 6 strategies, or even other hybrid strategies, which you'll find on other videos inside of this channel. Now, the first one is probably the most obvious. If you find a great deal through means of your marketing, through means of these popular strategies, you can buy the house yourself. You can rent the house yourself. You can keep it for yourself. So keep it for yourself is probably the most valuable of all of these specific revenue opportunities, because if you buy the right house, that house can end up converting into generational wealth for you, for your grandchildren, for your children, and for your spouse. That property could result in you being able to replace your income and leave your work. That property, in the case of many of my students, can be the game changer, which allows you to leave the UK, start to live in Dubai, or allows you to free up your time so you can find your wife, or allows you to go from £3,000 a month to £15,000 a month simply because you retain the asset for yourself. Okay, so one revenue opportunity, which I think is super powerful, is literally just keeping the asset for yourself, okay? Revenue opportunity number 2 is for you to sell that property to somebody else. And literally just by trading that asset to someone who's more interested in buying it at a fast speed, you can create a situation for yourself where you are now generating a revenue just off of a property you found. Now, there's a lot of information throughout the internet about how to become compliant as what we call a property sourcer, but I'm not even talking about necessarily doing that. And the reason why is because, yes, you might need to qualify for anti-money laundering. You might need to get registered with the ICO. You're going to have to be with a property ombudsman and so forth and so forth. And if you guys are interested in me doing a video on that, then let me know in the comments below. But for this second revenue opportunity, what you can do, which is even more simple than even becoming compliant, you can partner through a process which we call co-sourcing. And what that allows you to do is buddy up effectively with someone who has gone and become compliant as a property sourcing agent, and you can actually partner with them. And that can allow you to pass the deals that you get, which makes sense to you, over to them in order for them to actually do the transactional part, the trading part of the property deal. So that's the second revenue opportunity. Revenue opportunity one is you retain the asset for yourself, you buy the house, you rent the house. Revenue opportunity two is you trade the property to someone else, and specifically using the formation of co-sourcing, so you don't have to go through the rigmarole of becoming compliant yourself, and you allow that transaction to take place with somebody else. Okay, so that's the second revenue opportunity. The third revenue opportunity, which every single time I share this, people are like, Samuel, where did you learn this, right? The third revenue opportunity is through means of paid partnerships. Okay, now Samuel, what do you mean paid partnerships? Well, paid partnerships are essential in every business outside of property, so why would we not utilize them inside of property too? So what does it look like? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. In every property transaction, there are key people that are necessary for the transaction to be successful. So for example, one of those might be a mortgage broker. And what you can do is you can create an introducer's agreement between you and a mortgage broker. And every time you find a great property deal that someone else wants to buy, you can introduce the buyer to your property broker. And by doing that, what will happen is that broker will be paying you a fee every single time you introduce them to someone who will utilize them for their service. Now, I'm gonna say this, you can do this with so many service providers, it is unreal. So you think about it for yourself. Imagine finding property deals, imagine going through the work and actually becoming compliant. Imagine making a 2% fee on the sale of a property. Let's say that property is £300,000 and you're gonna generate a £6,000 fee. But imagine you've also introduced a solicitor, you've also introduced a mortgage broker, you've also introduced a surveyor, and through means of all of those introductions, you've generated three more streams of income from that singular transaction. So they're free revenue opportunities. And again, if you're interested in more revenue opportunities like this or a deeper dive on the introducer's agreement process, then again, guys, just leave a comment down below. Now that we've gone through popular strategies, now that we've gone through revenue opportunities, the last thing I want to share with you guys is a few case studies for you to understand how real this thing is. Now, I want to share with you the case study of networking, because I think networking is one of the most underutilized property sourcing strategies. So I'm going to share with you a very simple story, okay? A number of years ago, as I mentioned, I was hosting one of the largest property networking events in the whole of the UK. We'd have over 100 landlords coming every single month. And this is how I was able to study and literally learn from these landlords what they were all doing wrong, but also at the same time distill to them in a very simple, simplistic, structured, systemized way how to do it right. Now, it was through means of doing that I basically connected with an amazing lady named Eve. Now, what Eve did is she was into the property sourcing space just like I was, but she was actually focused on a different neck of the woods, a different area. And Eve gives me a call one day and says, "Hi, Samuel, I'm speaking to this mortgage broker, and this mortgage broker has a problem." Okay. And I say, "Okay, tell me about the problem." Well, the mortgage broker has a client who took a mortgage from them 2 years earlier. And unfortunately, that specific client has been unable to pay their mortgage. And by virtue of the fact that they've been unable to pay their mortgage, their house is potentially about to get repossessed. Okay. So my next question was, okay, how can I help you? And Eve basically explained very simply. She said, "Look, Samuel, you operate in that neck of the woods, that was in East London. And as a result, I thought you're the best person to connect you with this mortgage broker." So Eve did exactly that. She connected me with the mortgage broker. I was able to go and view the property. And when I viewed the property, I was able to connect with the mortgage broker myself, have my own conversations with the mortgage broker, and find out exactly what was going on with the property. Now, what was going on with the property, I'll give you a few bits of details, just so you guys have a very, very clear picture. What was going on with the property was the owner of the property had inherited the property with siblings. I think there was 2 other siblings besides the actual owner. When he inherited the property, he bought his siblings out of the property, and he was apparently a builder or he was in some kind of a trade. So after buying out his 2 siblings, him and his wife now owned this property as their second residence. They had their own home and they had this property that they inherited. And because the husband was a builder, he decided, well, he's going to refurbish the house himself. So he's now using his spare time and no time and overtime and after time to attempt to refurbish this house that he and his wife have inherited. So he's now decided as a builder that he's going to refurbish this house that he and his wife have bought out his siblings from and he's inherited. Now, the challenge is most people don't realize this, but if you've got a full-time job, you've got a full-time family, it can become very difficult to start having another full-time project behind the scenes. So what basically happened is the work didn't get done, the work got behind, and as the work didn't get done and got behind, his wife also, who apparently was a teacher or an educator of some form, she lost her job. So straight after she lost her job, what ended up happening was they had one income in the household instead of two incomes in the household, but they've got two mortgages going out, even though they've only got one income coming in. And that very, very quickly spiraled into them not being able to pay the second mortgage each month. And then obviously them having a challenge. Now, the mortgage broker literally, you might say by chance, calls the family and says to them, hey guys, your 2 years is up on your fixed product. So I'd like to talk to you about your remortgage. And that's where everything came out. The owner of the house basically shared, he's got a challenge. The challenge is the fact his wife's lost her job. He's been trying to do the project. Because he hasn't finished the project, they can't rent it out. And as a result, it's sat empty. And if it's sat empty, they can't make money off it. If they can't make money off it, it's just a downward spiral. So as a result, they had no idea of how they were going to fix that problem. And basically repossession was inevitable. Until they shared with the mortgage broker and the mortgage broker connected with me. So through means of me connecting with the mortgage broker, I was able to look at the property, evaluate the property, work out whether the property stacked up or didn't stack up, and basically proceed from there. So guys, I wanted to share that case study with you just so you can have a clear understanding that what I believe is the most underutilized strategy to source properties, networking, is a viable strategy. It's through property networking that I've met landlords who have portfolios of over 34 properties and are trying to have fire sales and get rid of every single one of them. It's through networking that I was able to meet mortgage brokers who have clients who are trying to sell their house with speed. And it's also through networking that I've probably done my most valuable property investment transactions. So I want to encourage you to take advantage of property networking as well as the other 5 popular strategies that I've shared with you. So a question you might be asking yourself is, Samuel, well, where do I go from here? And that is a great question. What I encourage you to do is maybe watch this video again and write down the specific strategies that stood out to you, the specific strategies you want to go forward with, and just take your first step. And I'm here to help you, and so's my team. And if you're interested, you can come and be a part of our upcoming Cashflow Creation Week, where we help you move further faster on your property investment journey in simply 5 days. Over those 5 days, what we basically go through is the science of cashflow creation. We then tap into the actual strategies of cash flow creation. We then show you on day 3 the skills of cash flow creation. And then by day 4, we can open up the systems of cash flow creation. And we have the grand finale on day 5 of cash flow creation success. So if you're interested in that, check the link in the description below. With all of that being said, I pray you've got tons of value from this video. Feel free to take advantage of going to watch this video right here, which YouTube believes will be of great value to you. And with that being said, as I usually say, remember, small keys open up big doors. And I'll see you on the next one.